Thank you for your testimony. And now, members of the dais, we are going to take 5 minutes for each of you for questioning. And I am going to start out, and I'm going to start out with you, Mr. Chilton. So is it accurate, we talked about the environmental degradation, the garbage, the pollution that is out there on lands here, including federal lands in southern Arizona. Is that accurate that this problem has been getting worse?
It's been getting worse. It's an environmental degradation. Witness Del Cueto stated that there have been millions of people apprehended. Bottom line, if you have 3 million people coming across the border at 8.5 pounds of garbage apiece, that's 12,500 tons of trash. I get very tired of riding through my ranch and seeing and observing trash left by these crossers.
So you've seen a massive increase over the last couple of decades, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mayor, I want to turn to you. You mentioned about social media, about how they use that to be able to facilitate these illegal crossings.
Yes, sir.
So we have a federal law that prevents someone from breaking the law. So in other words, let's say you took out an ad in a newspaper and you said, hey, drive your car down to the southern border and you can pick up a bunch of people that are hauling fentanyl. That would be illegal under federal law. Do you think that law should be enforced in regards to the social media companies?
Chairman Tiffany, yes, sir, I definitely do. And the sheriff can talk for days on this one. That is how these low car drivers get their marching orders. They get a text, they get a phone call, meet here, the car station at probably Walmart or Target. Keys are on the tire. Pick up the car, drive south. Pick up the load, drive north.
Yeah. So we had a vice president from Microsoft say that I believe it was one of the social media companies that said that our platform gets used to be able to facilitate these illegal crossings. I think it's about time that the social media companies who are quick to censor some people, that they do their job to prevent these illegal transactions from going on. Sheriff Daniels, I want to talk about fentanyl for just a second. What's the biggest action, what's the most significant action that happened over the last few years that has led to increased fentanyl coming into the United States of America?
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just say this. The biggest thing is when we deferred our Border Patrol, which is the frontline agents on the line, and put them in processing and other duties assigned. You shut down the checkpoints. You shut down a lot of your aerostats along the border. Long story, I call it the infrastructure fracture when it comes to the CBP. You've opened up the border. And the more agents you take off the border, the more opportunities. The cartels are the true winners in this, and they are exploiting our borders with fentanyl.
So in other words, Sheriff, on January 20th of 2021, when President Biden in effect declared open borders, that is largely what precipitated this massive increase of fentanyl coming into our country. Is that right?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, and I stopped today at a Border Patrol checkpoint. It has not been manned for a long time, and it's not the fault of the Border Patrol. It's because they're being babysitters at this point. It's terribly unfortunate. And by the way, I asked Secretary Mayorkas in a hearing. I sit on the Judiciary Committee. Sheriff Daniels was there in Washington, D.C. He cited the same exact testimony. It has not changed in the 3 times I've asked Sheriff Daniels this question. And I asked, who's not telling the truth? Because Secretary Mayorkas said to us, no, the actions of January 20th of 2021 are not the reason why fentanyl has increased the way it has. I said, who's lying? The sheriff or you? Of course he would not go after Sheriff Daniels because he is above repute amongst not just local citizens here in Arizona, but amongst the people of the United States who have worked with him. Secretary Mayorkas was not telling us the truth. The final thing I'd say in my closing couple seconds is I really appreciate the testimony of Mr. Del Cueto, and I understand why the position that the Border Patrol took in regards to the bill that was released by the Senate. But I just point out a couple things to you in regards to the Senate bill. The President can declare an emergency under that bill at any time and have open borders. Do you think for a second the current President would not declare an emergency and allow open borders to happen? Furthermore, the lead author, one of the lead authors said over the past weekend, under that bill, the border never closes, and went on to say that just today, that our priority, not American citizens, our priority is not American citizens, it is the people who are in here illegally. I now recognize the chairman, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary, having been sufficiently chastised, I'm going to start here. Roughly 40% of our southern border is federal lands. Is trash on the federal lands along the border an issue?
Congressman, I have not been to the border, so I couldn't tell you that.
How much funding in your department's budget is directed towards trash on federal lands along this southern border? Do you know offhand?
I would be happy to, for us to research that and get back with you on
Yeah,
it.
and I don't expect you to know that right offhand, but I can tell you, it's zero. It's zero. The Bureau of Land Management shared with us when I was down to the southern border in February, and we looked with all the damage that's being done, fentanyl overdoses, crime that's rampant, that's happening in places around America. There's 193 tons of garbage that was picked up by the Bureau of Land Management in 1 year. You said one of the tasks that Interior, that you all take very importantly, it's one of your priorities, is conserving natural resources. Is dumping 193 tons of garbage on our federal lands conserving our natural resources?
Clearly not.
Representative Stauber, just here to my left, asked you a question in regards to consultation. Why did you not meet with the slopers? Why have you not consulted and coordinated? I understand that you met with them very early on, but since then they've had real concerns with the actions taken by the Biden administration and Interior. Why have you not met with them?
Congressman, I want to assure you that we have had very strong engagement with Alaska Native tribes and the ANCSA corporations and I can just say, starting on March 13th, 2023, the administration previewed its intent to develop this draft rule. On August 25th, in advance of the publication, the BLM mailed a formal offer of consultation to 45 tribes and 30 Alaska Native corporations.
Madam Chair, or Madam Secretary, I'm sorry, if I may interject. Do you know if the North Slope communities prefer the Obama-era integrated activity plan or the Trump-era integrated activity plan? Have they told you, the one that you rescinded, the Trump-era one that was also there during the Obama era, have they told you which one they preferred?
Congressman, I do want to say that there are a lot of tribes in the area that you're referring to.
So we heard from them, Madam Secretary, we heard from them in committee here. They prefer the Trump-era plan because they went and consulted with them. Do you know, Madam Secretary, that you could be breaking the law by not following the consultation and coordination requirements that are in place?
Thank you for
Madam
the
Secretary,
information.
do you know when they came and testified before us, I believe they refer to themselves as the slopers, they've said since 1980, their life expectancy has went up 13 years. And it's directly a result of finding oil and natural gas up in that area that has benefited their communities. In fact, there was a gentleman that was here. His arm was all bandaged up. He took a harpoon through his hand, and if it wasn't for the clinic that was built, and we heard this directly from him, the clinic that was built as a result of oil revenue, he said he may not be here today. He may have bled to death. Did you know that their life expectancy has went up 13 years since the discovery of oil and gas?
Congressman, I appreciate that information. I want you to know that there are many tribes in Alaska, and we know that they don't all feel the same way about every single project that happens in Alaska. It's our job to hear from everyone. We did extend the public comment periods for this issue, and we understand there has been a request, and my staff is working through the request currently.
Madam Secretary, one of your employees put this quote up here. We got to rush this through. Is rushing and evading the consultation and coordination requirement? I'll close with this question. Will you commit today to delaying the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska regulation so that you can meaningfully engage with North Slope communities, Native villages, Native corporations, and federally recognized tribes? Will you make that commitment to consult with them as is required under the law?
Congressman, I can assure you that we don't generally work to rush anything through. We take everything that we do very seriously, and we follow the process to a T.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I yield to the chairman.
Ask unanimous.
Thank you very much, Director Sams. We'll now move on to questioning at this point. I'm going to begin the questioning here of our witnesses. Director Sams, your agency manages 195 miles of land along the southern border. Have you visited the southern border in your capacity as director?
Yes, sir. I most recently, last year, went and visited Saguaro National Park and was able to talk about border issues, both with the Tohono O'odham tribe and with my staff.
And have you seen the impact of the garbage that is being dropped at the southern border by illegal immigrants?
I am very concerned about that same thing, sir, and I thank you for the question. Yes, we are very aware of the amount of impact we are seeing on the southern border with the amount of trash. We work continually to ensure the safe environment for our visitors down there and for staff alike in working to resolve those issues.
Director Stone, Manning, your agency manages 173 miles of land on the southern border. Have you visited the southern border as a director?
Congressman, I have.
You have visited, and have you seen the environmental devastation that's going on the southern border like I have?
Congressman, I didn't see a lot of trash. I did see some cleanup work necessary from the previous administration's construction projects.
Oh, I see. It was the previous administration's fault that there's 193 tons of garbage that have been dropped on the federal lands. Is that what you're saying?
No, Congressman, I'm saying I didn't witness that trash.
You didn't witness that trash?
I didn't.
I would recommend, I've seen it a couple times when I've been down to Arizona, including recently in the last, it was about a month and a half ago. And so in your opening statement, you say that you're, one of the things that you seek to do is to conserve and protect the environment of the Bureau of Land Management lands that you manage. Is that preserving and protecting them by allowing this dumping of waste on the BLM lands and then not picking it up?
Yeah, Congressman, there's no doubt that illegal trash dumping is a problem all across our public lands. I just met yesterday with some folks from New Mexico, the Tusuki Pueblo, who is very concerned about the amount of trash on the Kaha. Idaho has a Don't Dump on Idaho PSA campaign running. It's unfortunately a real problem all across our public lands with people disrespecting them, and we're doing as much as we can to ensure that we stop that behavior.
You're doing as much as you can. How many dollars did you allocate for this in the Bureau of Land Management budget?
Congressman, I don't have that number before me.
I do. $0. You put $0. So it's a priority, but you don't put any money towards it. Is that what you're saying?
Congressman, we pick up hundreds and thousands of pounds of garbage every year on our public lands.
Have you met with Secretary Mayorkas about this?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that question.
Have you met with Secretary Mayorkas about this problem?
I have not met the Secretary.
So when you appeared for confirmation before the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, Senator Barrasso asked the following question. If I'm confirmed as or you made the following statement: if I am confirmed as BLM director, I will work with the Department of Homeland Security and other relevant departments, agencies as appropriate to address border-related issues on the public lands. It's now been 951 days since you were confirmed. Were you lying to Senator Barrasso and the Senate when you said that you were, as a, confirmed that you were going to work with Homeland Security to deal with this problem?
Congressman, I know the many BLM staff who dedicate their work day in and day out along our southern border work daily with the Department of Homeland Security.
But you haven't.
I have not had direct interaction with the secretary, who's a very busy man.
So the director of Bureau of Land Management, 173 miles of southern border lands, and this is not a priority with nearly 200 tons of trash being dropped as a result of illegal immigration, and you're supposed to be preserving and protecting our best lands in the United States of America?
Congressman, it's a really important issue all across our public lands, and our staff works on it each and every day.
Director Sams, how much is an electric vehicle? How much does it cost to buy an electric vehicle?
It depends on the type. If we're talking light utility vehicle or just a car, it can cost anywhere between $25,000 to as much as $80,000.
Kelly Blue Book says on average it's about $54,000. Does that sound about right?
Yes, sir.
How much is the National Park Service proposing for the Southwest Border Resource Protection Program?
Approximately $1 million.
$1 million?
Yes, sir.
How much is that an increase?
About 8,000, sir.
So about $8,000 more. But the budget includes $4.2 million for electric vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the electric vehicles are more important than our southern border?
Oh, we're not saying that at all, sir.
I will yield back. I've exceeded my time, and next I will turn to the ranking member, Mr. Levin, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to shift gears entirely, and I'm first going to say it's nice to see.
Gentlelady yields. So the issue of, Director Stone Manning, the issue of FLIPMA has come up a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And you're familiar with the coordination requirement in FLIPMA, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how it's much different than, we hear the terms collaborate, things like that. Coordination is much different, isn't it?
Our cooperating agencies help make our work better.
But coordination, that term, is clearly defined and is much different than like just cooperating or collaborating. Isn't that correct?
Congressman, I don't think I know where you're going with this question.
Well, I'd go in this direction. So we heard from the gentleman from Guam how his constituents were not heard, that they were not included in the process. He expressed concern, and he was very mild about it and respectful, but it was clear he was saying that on the issue he had in the Mariana Islands that they were not being heard. We heard from the gentleman from Utah, not a single hearing in regards to Bears Ears, is that correct?
Congressman, regarding the gentleman from Guam, we don't manage lands on Guam. Regarding the gentleman from Utah, we held public meetings all over the West in capital cities that were easy to get to. We also held meetings online, virtually, so that people can participate from their homes.
Did you coordinate with the local municipalities?
Congressman, we work very closely with the state of Utah.
You coordinated, treated them as an equal at the table when you were doing the process. Is that what you're saying? Because coordination is a very specific item within FLIPMA that you must sit down and work with local governments, local and state governments, as equals. Did you treat them as equals?
On the Bears, I think he was referring to the Bears Ears plan and the Grand Staircase plan, and we do work with local entities to take their concerns into consideration. On the public lands rule itself, We did that work with easily 100 staffers at the Bureau whose job it is to implement and manage on the ground
Did you
every
fully
day.
coordinate with the governing entities in Utah, including local governments?
On the public lands rule, no, we did not. They did have a chance between draft and final, however, during a 90-day public period.
Thank you for letting us know,
to get
because
in.
that you did not coordinate, because it is a different process than simply a hearing. I'm going to go to some testimony from Secretary Holland from a couple of weeks ago, and it had to do with the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, their regulation. Didn't the tribes up there ask for an extension on the provision that you folks put in place? Didn't they ask for an extension, and weren't they denied?
Congressman, we granted 2 extensions in the public comment period for the NPRA rule.
So the tribes are lying to us, saying that they did not get the extension, because that's what they told us. They did not get an extension in a hearing here before the Natural Resources Committee.
Congressman, I can't speak for the tribes. What I can tell you is we extended the public comment period twice.
So a BLM employee said, I wish we could give an extension. In other contexts, we might have that kind of time, but I'm happy to regale you with the ins and outs of the Congressional Review Act, but unfortunately, we're on a schedule with this one that we don't have any control over. So we just don't have that kind of time for this rule as a result of denying the extension. Did you instruct your employee to say that?
Congressman, I did not instruct that colleague to say that. I can tell you that we met.
Is that employee still working for the Bureau of Land Management after making a statement like that?
Congressman, she doesn't work for the Bureau.
Did you issue any sort of directive in regards to this, whether it's formal or informal, to say that we're going to get you around the Congressional Review Act by doing this in such a manner? Did you issue any directives?
Congressman, we worked very hard on this rule and many others, and the timing is what the timing was. We've worked for the last 2.5 or 3 years on these rules, and here we are. And as you know, I don't know what the deadline is for the Congressional Review Act because it moves every year, right?
By the way, I was just handed a note. The tribe asked for 90 days. They got 30. So we hear all this happy talk from the administration. We heard it from you today also in regards to we are so serious about working with the tribal interests around the country. We believe in nation-to-nation collaboration and things like that. But you didn't do that in Alaska. You didn't take into account their request. Does this administration only work with the tribes when it serves your interests and not necessarily the tribe's interests?
Congressman, I am so proud to work under the historic leadership of Secretary Holland. We engage with tribes at the department like we never have in our history. By my count, we met with folks on the North Slope 17 times. Then we had 3 public meetings on top of that. And so we listened very hard to what they say, and the final rule that we promulgated recently incorporates in part what we heard from them.
And you would not give them the extension that they wished for. A tribal interest in Alaska asked for a 90-day extension, and you did not, the Bureau of Land Management did not give that to them. Isn't that correct?
What we were able to do is continue in government-to-government tribal consultation, which is not dictated by a public comment period. So the public comment period shut down, but the government-to-government consultation continued.
You have a long history of anti-natural resource utilization in this country, both private and in public. It certainly appears that that you are continuing that in your role as the director at the Bureau of Land Management. And it's terribly unfortunate for the American people that we continue to see these types of actions that are leading to what is harming the American people at this point with inflation, higher energy prices, the denial of energy projects, and the anti-natural resources utilization mentality that exists with this administration. We see it all over the country. Americans see it all over the country, and you can deny it if you wish to, but that's not the case.
Congressman, what I am proud of is that 10,000 people who work for the BLM that I have the honor of overseeing created $232 billion in economic output last year. It's remarkable work.
And those 10,000 people are harming 300 million in the United States of America. I'd like to thank both the witnesses for your testimony and members for your questions. Members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for our witnesses today, and we will ask that the witnesses respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the subcommittee must submit questions to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. on Monday, May 20th, 2024. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for those responses. If there is no further business, without objection, the Subcommittee on Federal Lands stands adjourned.
Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is violent crime going down?
Excuse me?
Is violent crime going down?
According to the data I've seen, violent crime is going down, yes.
That's not what Director Ray told us a number of months ago when he was here before us.
What I've seen in recent numbers, violent crime is going down. There's a, in the 175 cities covered by the major city chiefs, there is double-digit reductions in violent crime. I was in Baltimore at the turn of the year, a 19% reduction in homicides. LA down 13%.
So when we had a hearing up in New York City just what was that, about a year ago, we heard from city councilors and others that they said that the police are not charging crime now because a district attorney would not prosecute that crime. And here, let me give you an example from a city in our state. Here was a statement from the district attorney in Milwaukee County. This is a number of years ago, but he still continues to be the district attorney. Is there going to be an individual I divert or I put into a treatment program who's going to go out and kill somebody? You bet. This is the same guy that led off the Waukesha Christmas killer who drove a vehicle through, killing 6 people just a couple years ago in a Christmas parade up in Wisconsin. Are you sure violent crime's going down?
I believe the numbers bear out that violent crime is going down. I think last year saw the most precipitous drop in violent crime.
You cited Minneapolis here in your testimony, whether it's indicting 45 Minneapolis gang members involved in murder and drug trafficking. We just had they have a district attorney in Minneapolis also that does not prosecute crime. She'll go after cops, as she's doing right now with a cop who was doing his job, and she's going after him now. Are you sure those indicted 45 Minneapolis gang members are actually going to be charged with a crime?
I was there to
Sure
announce
that?
the indictment myself, along with the U.S. Attorney, along with the Chief of Police, along with the Sheriff. They're already indicted, and I hope they go to jail for a long time.
And I think you said that there's more activity with the cartels. You commented about this Sinaloa cartel. Is there more activity going on down by the southern border?
What we see is the flow of firearms. Our job is, right, to stop firearms trafficking, which goes from the United States to Mexico. And we have seen an increase in our number of seizures. Now, that increase could be due to the fact that we're spending a lot of time and resources trying to stop that. But yes, we see a continuing problem.
Yeah, Director Ray would echo that a number of months ago, or I should say you're echoing what he said. He said, we are seeing a significant increase going on related to the southern border. So you would basically agree with his comment, his general comment in regards to that?
Yeah, with southbound traffic, it is a continuing threat.
You think the open border contributes to this?
So I am not in charge of the agency that controls the border, but with respect to southbound traffic, that's things going.
So have you shared that with the Attorney General?
Well, I think everybody Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Have you shared it with the Department of Homeland Security?
We work together on all of these task forces with the Department of Homeland Security, these southbound task forces. They have agents and officers sitting with us doing that interdiction for southbound firearms trafficking.
So they know this problem is getting worse.
Well, they're part of the fact of why the seizures are up, that we're interdicting more weapons than ever, double-digit increases last year in terms of southbound seizures.
So, Mr. Chairman, besides human trafficking, besides the terrorists that are coming across the border, We see another example here where the open southern border is making it potentially more deadly for Americans. We see these guns that are continuing to flow both ways across the border. And plus you have a border patrol that can no longer do their job as babysitters.
It is very rare. I'm sorry.
I'm going to close up here.
Sure.
If you have a, what would be your recommendation if somebody lied on their 4473 form? They dumped their pistol in a garbage can and it was in a school zone. What would be your recommendation for charging that person?
I think that echoes the fact of a publicly reported case. I'm not going to comment on a pending matter, and I think that question is aimed at that.
So it's an example of somebody that did something like that, and I'm sure it's happened before. What would you recommend they be charged with?
If a person out there intentionally lies on a 4473 form,
Yep.
They can be charged with the crime of lying on a 4473 form.
Dumped a pistol in a garbage can? So those are the facts of the case?
Again, I'm not going to
What would you
comment on
do?
specific facts. If somebody lies on a 4473, I mean, that was part of the charges in the case that we discussed earlier, that was the subject of so much discussion. That's public, but not commenting on the specifics, that's a crime.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to close real quickly. The dual system of justice in America, Hunter Biden versus Brian Malinowski.
Gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany.
Attorney General, during the department's criminal investigation of Hunter Biden, investigators gave Hunter's counsel a heads up regarding their future investigative actions, specifically a pending search warrant. Does the Department of Justice usually tip off the defense counsel ahead of time to warn them that they'll be executing a search warrant?
You're asking me about a case that's in trial as we speak, and I'm just not going to comment on it. I think that's highly inappropriate for me to do.
Oh, this would not be inappropriate at all. Do you warn defense counsel ahead of time? Is this a standard operating procedure for the Department of Justice to notify that you're going to execute a search warrant?
I think I've answered this question before. It depends on the situation. In some circumstances, yes. In some circumstances, no. Generally not, but
so shortly after,
always.
if I may interrupt, shortly after the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, you said upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Did the Department of Justice give the same courtesy to President Trump's counsel and warn them about the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago?
Saying the issues are determined on the ground with respect to what people are concerned about on the ground. That issue about Mar-a-Lago is also the subject of a challenge in court, and I'm not going to comment about that either.
So one, you notified defense counsel, the other one you didn't.
I don't know whether you're accurately describing what happened in the Hunter Biden case or not.
During Special Counsel Herr's investigation into whether or not President Biden retained classified documents, he found that President Biden knew the information in his possession was classified. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall the exact words of Mr. Herr, but they are what they are.
Yeah, I mean, he knew the information. Joe Biden knew the information that he had in his possession was classified. I think that's widely known.
Again, Mr. Herr testified for 5 hours in front of you, and all these questions could be asked of him. And a long report that's on the public record on this question. I'm just not going to comment, just like I didn't comment on Mr. Durham's report when people asked me to do that.
Did then Vice President Biden have the authority to declassify the classified documents he illegally retained?
Mr. Herr addressed any questions like that in his report. I know what you're really asking me about is the case in Florida, and I'm just not going to comment on matters that are being litigated in court. It's highly inappropriate for me to do that.
So you can't comment on something that's already out there publicly by Mr. Herr. Simply, did Vice President Biden, then Vice President, did he have the ability to declassify classified documents?
Mr. Herr,
Does any vice president have the ability to declassify classified documents?
it Depends on who the original, I mean, the ultimate theory goes back to an executive order that depends on the originator of
here.
the classification.
Have any
This is
other-
a very long discussion about classification.
Have any other former presidents, vice presidents, or cabinet secretaries retained classified information after they left office? Have others done this?
I don't know. Mr. Herr.
Did Vice President Pence have classified documents?
Mr. Herr recounted the information that he had about past
Did
keeping
former
up.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, did she have classified
Know
documents?
anything more than Mr. Herr reported in his report on these matters?
How many of those that have had classified documents, either a former vice president like Pence or Secretary of State like Hillary Clinton, how many of them were charged with retaining classified information?
Mr. Herr explained why he chose not to recommend a charge.
The answer is none of them were charged. And how many of them, none of them were charged other than President Trump. How many of them are currently running for president against President Biden?
Mr. Herr explained in detail the reasons that distinguished former president's case from the current president's.
Was there opposition in the Washington field office seeking a search warrant of Mar-a-Lago?
I'm hoping that there's always discussion in field offices about the appropriate approach.
Who gave the go-ahead to do the search?
I know that the reference to the special agent that was made earlier left out the conclusion of his transcript, which is he thought it was lawful.
Who gave the go-ahead to do the search warrant, to execute the search warrant on Mar-a-Lago?
Magistrate judge in the district approved the House and the Justice Department, as well as between the Congress and the Justice Department, to ensure that political considerations are not taken into consideration. But the principal bulwark of the rule of law is the career workforce of the department. The agents and the prosecutors who do their jobs every day with only one purpose, to do the right thing in every case.
Thank you, Attorney General.
Former president's case from the current president.
Was there opposition in the Washington field office seeking a search warrant of Mar-a-Lago?
I'm hoping that there's always discussion in field offices about the appropriate approach.
Who gave the go-ahead to do the search?
I know that the reference to the special agent that was made earlier left out the conclusion of his transcript, which is he thought it was lawful.
Who gave the go-ahead to do the search warrant, to execute the search warrant on Mar-a-Lago?
Magistrate judge in the district approved the House and the Justice Department, as well as between the Congress and the Justice Department, to ensure that political considerations are not taken into consideration. But the principal bulwark of the rule of law is the career workforce of the department. The agents and the prosecutors who do their jobs every day with only one purpose, to do the right thing in every case.
Thank you, Attorney General.
From Wisconsin's recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was when you were here December of last year, Mr. Ray, that you said blinking lights were going off in regards to the southern border and what is happening down there. Has the border situation improved in terms of your assessment with the security of Americans since you were last here in December?
Well, I guess a couple things, and I appreciate the question. So first, the blinking lights comment that I made refers more broadly to the threat environment that I'm seeing as FBI director across a wide range of threats. Contributing to that in a variety of ways are the threats that emanate from the border. So it's not a comment just on the border issues, it's the threat environment that we face more broadly, in my experience in law enforcement. I am increasingly concerned that foreign terrorists could seek to exploit vulnerabilities at our southwest border or at other ports of entry or in other aspects of our immigration system to facilitate an attack here in the United States. I think that is something we have to be concerned about. And there's been a lot of focus on numbers of this, numbers of that, and I understand that. But as I think was referenced in an earlier question, it doesn't take very many foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19 hijackers responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And we just, not that long ago, had a case, some of the members of the committee will remember, where we charged an individual for trying to smuggle individuals in to assassinate former President Bush.
Are you concerned that the Border Patrol chief, former Border Patrol chief Rodney Scott, said that he was concerned about very, very minuscule data that they were receiving? So there's all this, we are told that illegal aliens are vetted against databases, but oftentimes they're doing biometrics as they come into this country, but not looking behind it in their home countries. Does that concern you when there's not a review done in the home country?
Well, we certainly need as much help as we can get from the countries of origin of these people. And when I say origin, not just where they come from originally, but countries they've come through. And the biometric enrollment piece is, of course, an important one. We have situations where even if...
Are we doing a thorough enough job of reviewing them, their actions, and their lives in their home countries before they came here?
Well, I mean, we need more help from our foreign partners. There's no question about that. And I think that's an important part of it.
How about our domestic partners, like the CIA and others that are supposed to protect us?
So there's been a lot of discussion, of course, over the last several years about the pivot to what's called the hard targets, right? The understandable focus, which I support, of focusing on the threat posed by China and Russia and Iran. But with that comes, if you look at, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we start to lose sources of information about foreign terrorist threats from overseas, and that is a concern to me.
Yeah, my time's running out. Has Vice President Harris met with you in regards to the border?
Well, I've been in meetings that have included the Vice President that have in different ways touched on border
Has she
issues.
specifically asked you for a meeting in regards to the threat that is at the border?
You know, I'm not going to get into sort of specific meetings, but I can tell you that I've been in meetings that have included, among other people, the Vice President that touch on border security issues.
Did she ask you questions about what you thought needed to be done in regards to reducing this threat to the American people?
You know, I really can't get into specific conversations.
Is support for President Trump a security concern within the FBI?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Is support for President Trump a security concern amongst your employees?
No.
Is objection to the COVID-19 vaccine a security threat?
Not from my perspective.
Who improved what is termed the Trump questionnaire within the FBI that was done by SIIS? Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Ventry were behind it. Who was responsible for that? And did you know that there was a Trump questionnaire out there?
So the document you're asking about is an interview outline that we only recently learned about, and in my view is completely inappropriate. I asked my team to get to the bottom of what happened and to ensure that doesn't happen again, and I've learned that it's not an FBI form, that its use was isolated, that it was created not by an FBI employee, but by an outside contractor, and that individual is no longer affiliated with the FBI. But we are sending what we have found to the Office of Inspector General, and we'll cooperate, of course, with anything they...
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with this. We keep hearing about these isolated examples, whether it's Richmond Catholics, this instance. Isn't it a pattern? I yield back.
Gentleman goes back.